Hello and welcome, everybody. We are here with Craftsy to get you into the spooky spirit by bringing you 5 days of sweet treats and spine-tingling crafts that are just perfect for a frightfully fun time. Every day this week, our instructors are demonstrating new Halloween-inspired projects, and you want to make sure to download your free patterns by clicking the link in the description. Once you get to the patterns page, click the picture of the project that you would like to download. Now, if you have any questions during the event, please leave your comments in the blue chat box below or in the chat on Facebook and YouTube. We typically have a little bit of time at the end of each demonstration to get some of your general questions in, so feel free to drop those. But also, if you have any questions on the step-by-step instructions that are being provided, I try to slide those in as they come, so you can get the best out of today's live demonstration. Now, before we jump in and introduce today's instructor, really fun, we are giving away a free Craftsy Gold membership. All you need to do to enter for your chance to win that membership is text Halloween to 52056. We will be contacting a winner after the series ends, so make sure to send that text. Again, it is Halloween to 52056. Send that text by October 9th for your chance to win that free Craftsy Gold membership. And more things like this will be coming at you for free. Really great. Good luck. Have fun. We're bringing in today's instructor next. That's it from me for now. We've got Maddie Gartmann coming to us live from our studios today. Hello and welcome, Maddie. Thank you for coming in and being here today. I would love for you to introduce yourself to our viewers, tell us a little bit about you, and then also what it is that we will be making with you today.
Hi, well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I love doing this. This is so much fun. My name's Maddie Gartmann. I have a cookie business called Garty Goodies, and I decorate cookies. And that's what I'm going to show you guys today, is how to make these adorable, spooky cookie pops. They're not really that spooky. They're more cute than spooky, because who doesn't love a cookie on a stick? And they make for like the most adorable social media picture. You know, you can just picture that on Facebook with the little ones. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get started, if that sounds good with you.
That sounds good to me. I'll let you know if any questions come as you go.
Yes, please feel free to ask questions if you need me to clarify anything or if I'm moving too fast. So first, I'm just going to walk through what we're going to need to make these. We're going to make 3 different designs today. You will need a roll of roll-out sugar cookie. So any recipe will do, as long as it creates a nice roll-out cookie that doesn't spread, because we really want to make sure that it maintains its shape. Then we're going to need some lollipop sticks. I found you can find these at any craft store. I got these at Walmart, so you can really find them anywhere. You'll need a knife. I like to use a little pen blade, but any sort of paring knife works great. I prefer to use a little scraper. That can be helpful, but you can also use a paintbrush too, and I'll show you that part. Then you'll want to download the PDF that comes with this video. You should see the link right there on your page, and print out the templates. I prefer to print mine out on cardstock just so it holds up a little bit better, and then cut them out. And then of course, we're going to need our royal icing. We are doing 5 different colors: orange, black, pink, red, and white. And we'll talk about those when we get to that part. Okay, so let's start with our cookie dough. Now, I have had this chilling in my fridge overnight. I always suggest chilling your dough. That's key for making sure that you have a nice, a cookie that keeps its shape nicely. And so this is a great way to avoid having to buy a ton of new cookie cutters. It's just creating a little template. You could even freehand this if you've got good freehand skills. But I'll take my little pen blade. I'm gonna lay, this is my little vampire teeth cookie pop, I should say, and just gonna cut right around it. Super simple. That's why I really like these pen blades, because they can get in all the little nooks. Here. I always have my cookie on parchment paper. So there's one, and kind of just pull it away. That parchment paper makes sure that it doesn't stick to your countertop. We'll slide this on our cookie sheet here. And then we're going to use this one for both the pumpkin and the kitty cat. It's just slightly modified for the kitty cat. And you don't have to perfectly cut it out, as long as you get the general shape. A little squiggly there.
Maddie, I'm going to jump in with a question quickly.
Absolutely.
Here. Just because we do have a lot of people that join these series and these events that are jumping across crafts. So that pen knife that you're using, do you want to talk just a little bit about if someone has one lying around that they might use for activities, how would you recommend making sure that that's properly cleaned so you can use it for this?
Oh, that's a great question. I personally would have a separate knife that was just for food use, just because I like to play it safe. So these ones I don't use on any other crafts, they're just for food. So if you don't have something like this, just grab a paring knife from your butcher block at home and that'll work just fine.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're gonna go to our kitty cat, which like I said, this one's just gonna be slightly modified from the template. All the way around. When your dough has been chilled slightly, it makes it a lot easier to work with. If it's fresh out of the mixer, it's going to be a little bit too flimsy. So the way that we're going to, oh yeah.
Well, Daka is asking how thick you roll your cookie dough.
This is a great question as well. So I personally like my sugar cookies to be 1/4 of an inch thick. Some people like 5/8 of an inch, which is a little bit thicker, but like I said, I like that 1/4 of an inch. I feel that the ratio of icing to cookie is a little bit better. So you can buy rolling pins that have little spacers on the ends of them, and that makes sure that it's the same thickness all the way. You can also, I think this is a nice workaround for those, if you just have a regular rolling pin, you can put 2 rulers, or I've even used paint stirring sticks. I've taped that to my countertop and rolled the cookie dough between those, and then that makes sure it just comes to that thickness. So a little cheat if you don't want to buy the fancy rolling pin. Okay, so now we've got our kitty cat pop. I'm just gonna put this to the side. Of course, normally I would use up all this dough and make as many cookies on one sheet as possible. But for now, we'll just throw this in the refrigerator. Okay, so we've got our 3 shapes that we're going to be working with. Got our kitty cat, our vampire, and our jack-o'-lantern. Now, this is the part that people can tend to miss. So you don't want to skip this part because it's really important for the process to make sure that the lollipops stay in. Now, since this is just a cookie, they can be really fragile. So what I do is I take my lollipop stick, I'm going to push the cookie to the edge here, and just press it in about halfway up the cookie. Don't press it in so far that would break through the cookie. You're just going to want to go about halfway down. Now you can just bake your cookie stick right into it. I usually want to fit a lot more cookies on the sheet, so I don't do it that way. And I'll show you how we glue them in. So this is a great way to do it if you want to bake a lot of cookies at once without having to bake the sticks into it. You could, like I said, just leave them in there. Okay, so now we're going to bake these cookies. Bake them at 375 for about 10 to 13 minutes, or just follow the directions on your specific sugar cookie recipe. Now, I will warn you, do not use the Pillsbury dough that comes in the little tube. Even though it's delicious, you can eat that, you know, but you don't want to use that for rollout cookies because that's going to create like a puffy cookie. You really want to make sure you have a rollout sugar cookie recipe for this, because we have to make sure we maintain the shape and a nice flat surface on top for decorating. So now we're going to pop this in the oven. And after about 13 minutes or so, we have our adorable little cookie pops, at least the start of them. So we got our lollipop sticks. I'm going to set those to the side. And let's talk about our royal icing. Now, of course, you would not want to decorate these until they are fully cooled off. We don't want to be worrying about the icing just melting right off the side of the cookie. So this is my royal icing recipe. It is a free video that you can watch on Creative Cake Design. Definitely recommend checking it out because I walk you through all the steps of how to make royal icing. But the basics of it are powdered sugar, water, meringue powder, and a little bit of flavoring. I personally like to use vanilla flavoring and a little bit of almond, but it's to your taste. And we are going to work with one consistency of icing. So a lot of times when you see somebody decorating cookies, they'll have a thicker outline icing and a thinner flood icing. Since we're only doing a couple cookies and we don't need a lot of tiny details, we're gonna work with just one consistency of icing. I call it like a hybrid consistency, which basically means we're just gonna cut a very small hole in the top of our icing bag, and we're gonna use that to both outline and flood, because you'll see that it can hold that outline shape, but it can also make a nice flood. So if you're at home and you took a look at my royal icing recipe, you're going to want this to be about a 15 to 20 second consistency. And that just means that it takes about 15 seconds for the royal icing to completely flatten out. So we're mixing our three colors. There's nothing fancy about these colors. They all come straight from the bottle. I use Americolor gel dyes. Chef Master's great. You can get lots of gel dyes in store too, but this is just rose pink, some orange, I didn't add anything else to this, black, red, and then white. I do use a drop of white food coloring in my large batch of royal icing. And for my black, you probably can't tell on this screen, but it's actually kind of a dark gray. I never put so much ice or so much food coloring in it that it turns it jet black, because what you'll find is that causes a lot of stained tongues, stained mouths, and it can bleed into the other colors. So when you're dyeing your black icing, just take it to a nice dark gray, and then it will naturally darken more on its own, and it looks black for the most part anyway. So we're actually going to start with our black icing. So for a couple of these cookie pops, they have kind of like a 3D effect where there's different layers. So to get that 3D effect, we're going to use, this is where the scraper comes in. So this one is my pumpkin cookie. And because we're going to put the jack-o'-lantern mouth here and we want the mouth to kind of pop and have the shadow, we're going to take the black icing and go right over here, just squiggle. And I'm going to use my scraper to make sure it completely covers. Basically, you just want to get the center part of the cookie because the mouth is going to go right around here. So our teeth are going to be covering up parts of this where we see the actual cookie. Now, I like to have just a little bit of something special. So I add a little bit of this, it's called disco dust. It's edible, and it just gives a little bit of glitter. So I'm gonna sprinkle a little disco dust. Halloween seems like the appropriate time to add some glitter. And that's gonna be just the background of the mouth of our pumpkin. You can add more or less, or you don't need to add any at all. Sprinkles would work great for that as well. And then we also want to get this effect with our vampire mouth because we'll have the tongue here and then the teeth, so we need kind of the black background of the mouth. And so we're going to do the same thing. Take that black and just make sure it's covering the back of the cookie. You could also use a paintbrush. Oops. We don't want it to run off the edge. But yeah, a paintbrush works great for this that you have dedicated to food only. Got a little bit on our teeth here. and doesn't really have to be perfect because we're gonna cover a lot of that up with icing. So next we're gonna glue our actual lollipop sticks into the cookie. So we'll do the same thing. We're gonna take our black and run it right through that line. Oh, I also forgot to mention, when you take your cookies straight out of the oven, when they are still warm, take that lollipop stick again and press it back into that indentation, just so that when it's warm, it continues to create that indent, and then it can dry and cool off with it. So I definitely suggest doing that just so it really locks the indent in. So we'll go back to our pumpkin cookie here, and I just put a little bit of royal icing in the indent, and then I'm gonna press rather firmly, but you can see it locks it in right away. And we're gonna be covering that up, so it does not matter how pretty or not pretty that is. And this one is our cat one. Same thing, I'm just gonna flood right in the middle and use it like glue.
So Maddie, it looks like you're already clarifying this, but Priya did ask, so you are icing the side with the lollipop dent?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And that's what makes this technique a little bit different from other people. But the reason I'm doing that is so that the actual decoration is what's going to lock the lollipop stick in. What can happen sometimes when you just put it on the back with maybe like a little white chocolate or royal icing, a kid grabs it and the cookie goes flying right off. So I found that this technique can kind of lock the stick in a little bit better. We'll go to our last one here. And then you just want to make sure that as they're drying, they're not kind of, you can see this one is starting to droop down. So as they're drying, we want to make sure they are elevated. You could even stick like a book or a magazine underneath just to be sure. And normally we would let these dry for about, I would say at least a half hour, maybe 20 minutes, just to make sure that they are locked in. We're gonna start decorating right away because I've got some of the steps already pre-decorated so you can get an idea. But like I said, normally I would let these dry just to be safe for another 10 minutes or so. So I'm gonna lock that one in. We're gonna start with, go back to our jack-o'-lantern here. Put that one in the center. Now we're gonna take our orange icing, and like I said, we're just cutting a very small hole in the tip because we want to be able to control the design. So the first thing I'm gonna do is create the pumpkin face. I can just use my sweatshirt for a template here. We're gonna kind of go for the same idea, but we wanna make sure that the stick is covered up with royal icing. So I'm gonna make sure first and foremost that there is a, oops, let me get my icing bag going here. It was a little clogged. That there is a tooth right in the center of my design. So it could be any shape. You could do a triangle tooth. I'm just gonna do the kind of traditional rectangle square tooth and make our smile. And I like to pipe the entire smile as the first thing because it's really what's gonna be driving the whole design. Oops, we got a skinnier tooth. We're gonna even that out. We'll make it a little bit bigger here. Okay, so there's our smile. And then because we want this to be a little bit more 3D, a little more puffy, we're gonna decorate this in sections. Now, if you're new to decorating with royal icing, the big thing you wanna know is that when you are decorating two sections of a cookie right next to each other, you wanna make sure they dry in between decorating them. So what you're gonna see is I'm gonna decorate the outside of this pumpkin first, and then I'm going to let it dry, work on another cookie while it's drying, and then we'll come back and do the center of the cookie. So I'm gonna draw my pumpkin lines. You'll see what I mean in a second. And then we're going to flood. So if you're working with that hybrid consistency, all you should have to do is press down a little bit more firmly on your icing bag. And then I'm using a cookie scribe, a toothpick, a bamboo skewer, anything that's pointy does this job. I'm going to use that to smooth out the lumps here. So we're just doing that section, and then we're going to decorate the other section here. So try to be as symmetrical as possible. So this is the other side of our pumpkin. And when you're outlining, you're just gently squeezing on your royal icing. And always lift up on the bag to get a straighter line. If you're trying to ice too close to the cookie, you can get a very wiggly line. So going back and flooding right away, this is kind of the relaxing part of cookie decorating.
Maddie, while you're doing that, we do have a couple more questions if you have a moment.
Absolutely.
So Kelsey is curious how long you wait for these to dry. You spoke about letting them dry before coming back to them.
So there's different, so for the cookie sticks, I would let them dry about 30 minutes before doing what we're doing right now. For the in-between sections like this, really just 5 to 10 minutes. It's not a ton of time, it's enough to get the top layer of the royal icing to crust over. What's interesting about royal icing is it dries both quickly and slowly, meaning that it'll crust over within 5 or 10 minutes in a dry climate, but it takes about 8 hours for it to fully dry all the way through. So as long as we get that crusted over look, and you can kind of start to see, because what will happen is it'll get less shiny. It'll have more of a matte effect to it, and that's when we know it's starting to dry. So like right now, we're just going to set this one very carefully to the side and pull in our little kitty cat. And once we're done decorating this one, we could even go back to the jack-o'-lantern one. It's not too long at all. So for the kitty cat, we're just going to leave the space for the pink nose. So all you have to do is make a little V there. And we're just going to go right over the lollipop stick. And then I'm going to flood. You can see this consistency is a little bit thinner than my orange, so I won't have to spread it out quite as much.
And Maddie, while you're doing that, I've got some more questions. You ready for more?
Absolutely.
All right, this is a little bit more general here from Haley. Haley has noticed when decorating cookies with the royal icing that the surface of her icing dries hard, but the icing underneath was not hard.
Yes.
Is Haley doing something wrong? Is that to be expected?
Essentially, that's what you want, because when someone eats your cookie, you want them to still have a soft bite. So if you're soft underneath, it probably means you're adding corn syrup to your recipe, which is what I recommend doing, because it creates that nice soft bite. So no, you're not doing anything wrong. If you let it dry out in the open air, eventually that bottom layer will harden. Now, if it's so soft that you can't even really work with the cookie because you're denting it when you stick your finger in it after a couple hours, it could mean that you're over mixing your icing. So if you're letting it beat on high for longer than 10 minutes, it could be over mixed, and then that means it won't really dry properly. So maybe look into that, possibly. But otherwise, it's a good thing to have a soft bite. We don't want to chip anybody's teeth when they're eating our cookies. So we're going to go on to the vampire fangs, and I'm going to take my red icing and create the little tongue, and that's what's going to cover up the lollipop stick on this design. So that's pretty simple because we just need like a little semicircle. and then flood right over. And actually the vampire cookie stick is the one we can do pretty much in one go from start to finish. Because after we do this, we're going to do the teeth. And we can decorate the teeth right away because it's not directly up against the red tongue, so we don't have to worry about the colors blending together. We don't have to create dimension. Now, if you want to challenge yourself, you can make little individual teeth, but I like to keep these designs really simple and approachable, so we're just going to go with the template.
All right, Maddie, we've got another couple questions about what you use for your tools here. So first, we're getting a great overhead shot of your baking sheets. And Joanne is wondering what kind of cookie sheet you are using.
So this one is, I'm not sure the brand on this, well, I can see right here, Good Cook. I really prefer anything that is an all aluminum, so like a silver. I really also like Nordic ware, but look for those silver baking pans that are 100% or mostly aluminum. A lot of people also really like to bake on parchment paper, or there are some silicone baking mats. I have a couple that I just got from Amazon, and they create a really nice texture on the bottom of your cookie, and it also really makes sure that your cookies don't spread. So I would just look up silicone baking mats. That's probably going to be more key than even your baking sheets, is using those, or a parchment paper of some sort. Again, that just helps you get a really nice even bake in the oven. I'm going to show you what the bottoms of my cookies look like here. So, yeah. So this is the bottom of a cookie. I don't know if you can get a close-up of it, but it has this really ridged texture to it, and you can tell that the cookie has been completely evenly baked. You don't get any darker spots up here or around the edges. It's just completely evenly baked, and that's from those silicone baking mats. I definitely recommend those. Got a little orange. So now I'm going to go back and kind of smooth out my little vampire mouth here. Got a little orange in it. Another way that I always suggest to get a flatter surface on your icing is to take your actual cookie and just jiggle it back and forth. I'm worried about the cookie sticks falling out for these, so I'm not going to do that. Now, really, the air is dry enough in here that I could probably just do the next steps. But since I already have them completed over here, we're gonna transfer to these. So these have been drying overnight. Like I said, you really only need a couple minutes in between steps, but I also wanted to have a finished product to show you what they look like and be able to hold it up without the lollipop stick falling out. So we're gonna finish up our jack-o'-lantern. And you can see once it's dried for about 8 hours, the stick is very secure, and I found that it's just a lot more secure than baking it right into the cookie.
Could you talk just a little bit more about that, actually, Maddie? So Greg has a question about, is it possible to decorate the cookie first and then add the stick on the back? I know you gave a great reason why you selected this technique. So if you could revisit that, that'd be great.
It's totally possible. There's a couple ways you can do it. You can use white chocolate. Just make sure that the cookie isn't in a super hot climate and the chocolate doesn't melt. But white chocolate works great to glue it down. You could also use royal icing on the back too and just let them dry. That's totally another way to do it.
And now you're icing on the front though, because you feel that helps lock in the stick, right?
Yeah, I just feel like it gives a little bit extra security. And then also I can lay my cookies flat for storage and packaging, and I don't have the stick kind of keeping it from totally lying flat. But like I said, both ways totally work. And go in and smooth these out. And now because this has been dry, I'm going to use the little jiggle technique to get a really nice flat surface. So that's when I just go like this. That's my favorite technique because I'm not going in there with my scribe a ton. And that flattens the icing out on its own. So our pumpkin one is already done. And our little vampire teeth. We just have our little kitty cat. So now we've got our pink icing. Okay. And just finish up the little heart here.
And then while you're doing that, Maddie, to follow on with the placement of the stick, Melissa was wondering why not place the stick into the cookie prior to baking. I know you mentioned it helps you bake more at one time,
Yep.
but I'm wondering if there are any other reasonings
That's
behind
the
that
main reason. My main reason is so I can fit more onto a sheet. Otherwise, when you bake, you only can really have 5 at a time, and usually cookie dough makes about 12 to 24, so I want to maximize the amount that I'm putting on a sheet. That's the main reason. Also, depending on your recipe and your climate, sometimes when you bake the stick right into the cookie, it doesn't hold it in, and it just for some reason can just pop right out. But my main reason is just to bake more on the sheet.
All right, and while she's doing that, just a reminder from me to anybody watching, we are going to have time for some of those more general questions. So if you have those, you can go ahead and drop those in. But also keep your questions coming. Jenny has a great one, but I'm going to save it because you might be touching this briefly as you finish things up. But Jenny, don't worry. I've got your question. I'll ask it if necessary.
Okay. Yeah, because we're on our very final steps here. We're just going to add the whiskers. And you know what? Just because we have time, we're going to make a little reflection line into the nose of the cat. And this is actually a really good way to demonstrate to you why I normally wait between steps, because I didn't wait on the pink. My white is going to solidify into the pink, which in this case I want, because I want it to look like a reflection line. So when you decorate your colors right on top of each other, they'll eventually settle into each other. And that's fine if that's what you're going for. But for most of this, we wanted the dimension between the colors. For this white reflection line, we don't want that dimension so much. And so then our final step is to do the whiskers here. And normally I would let this dry for about 5-10 minutes and then decorate the whiskers on top. And just 3 little lines. And you can even see just the black of this cookie, because it was decorated and dried for a day. It's a lot more matte than the freshly decorated parts. And if you want to try to maintain that shine on your cookie, put your cookie underneath a direct fan, like a little tabletop fan with it blowing down on the cookie. That's actually what I do when I'm decorating my cookies in bulk. I just always keep my tabletop fan running so that it can be drying them. It also helps the drying process so I can decorate them more quickly. And it adds that little bit of shine. So, so cute. So these are our 3, and you can see they are totally stable, super cute. You can package these, use a little cellophane bag. I really like the ones that are made for like lollipops that you can get in the craft section that have a curved top to them. Pull one over the top, tie a little bow around it, and you've got a really cute little Halloween treat there. But I would make sure you let them dry in open air, uncovered for at least 8 hours, and then package them at that point. I don't know if that maybe answered Jenny's question, but
that certainly got on to Jenny's question. She wanted to know if you had any recommendations for packaging these for favors. I'm actually wondering, to tack on to Jenny's question, the sticks, if people wanted to, place those in buckets or anything like that for a little display, how sturdy would these be? Or are there any things that you would recommend doing to make sure they hold if they're upright?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, like I said, cellophane bag to cover the top if you're not going to give them right away. Time with a twist tie. You could also just use, saran wrap or cellophane that you find at like the Dollar Tree. If you're going to stick these as like a cookie bouquet, they will stay really sturdy. This is the exact same thing I use to make like my flower cookie bouquets, the same technique. When I'm putting them into the pot or the jar, I'll get a little block of that styrofoam that you can get at the craft store, like usually in the floral arrangement section, and just pop them right into that styrofoam, and that keeps them nice and secure and super cute. Be a really fun way to display these, is make like a big Halloween little cookie pop display. Get some Tootsie Roll Pops. I love that. I might have to do that.
Maybe like in a jack-o'-lantern.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that would be so cute. Great idea.
All right, and then kind of on the same idea, but this is more on the storage end. Lisa wants to know if these cookies can be frozen after they have been iced.
Absolutely. I love this question because it's so key to use freezing to your advantage. These cookies take a lot of time. I've crunched it all into 30 minutes, but the baking and the making icing and the decorating can take days and days. So you might want to do it in steps. You can actually freeze at any point. So if you want to just make your dough one day, pop it in the freezer. It'll stay good in the freezer. If you have it completely covered and wrapped, it'll stay great for a couple weeks. If you want to decorate first, you can do the same thing, decorate the cookies, and then I would just put them into like a Ziploc and then put the Ziploc into a Tupperware container. That's what I do at home, store that. The main thing that you need to be concerned with is when you take them out to thaw them, just take that Tupperware container out of your freezer, set it on your kitchen counter, walk away. Don't touch it. Come back in a couple hours. We want to make sure all the condensation has completely dried up, because what will happen is if you start messing with the cookie when it's still got that layer of condensation, we can risk kind of ruining the cookie design, smudging the color, especially when we've got these blacks and these reds, these super saturated colors. So, but I freeze my cookies all the time. I swear by it. And I also think it makes the cookie taste better. Kind of has like a softer bite to it. So I definitely recommend doing that.
All right, we're going to get into some tools questions next. So Maddie, first, if you could go find our fancy cookie cutters that you used today and feature those again. An FYI for anyone that didn't catch us at the top of the hour, there is a link to a lot of the stuff that Maddie has been showing, the steps for the instructions, and also these fancy things that are in the description of the video and also in the chat box if you haven't downloaded yours. So go ahead and show those again, Maddie.
Yep, we just have a really simple template, and this works for any shape. I mean, if you find another shape, if you want to make a bunny rabbit or something else, all you have to do is just cut around it. I think it's such a great way of not having to buy fancy cookie cutters. But yeah, these are just really simple black and white templates. I print on cardstock and then just cut around. Any type of knife, kitchen knife, works for that.
And probably much smaller to store as well.
Yes, you can just put them in a binder or toss them.
All right, this is super general. We've seen some of your tools that you've used, but Kelsey wanted to know, what are some of your favorite tools, Maddie, that you use when you're decorating your cookies?
Well, my favorite tool is my rolling pin, which I didn't bring with me today, but it's called a Joseph rolling pin that I described earlier. It has adjustable rings on the end, and that just makes sure that I get my cookies nice and even. So that's my number one favorite tool because it's kind of a necessity for this. And then as far as the other tools, I mean, a good scribe, you can get fancy with them, but those are also kind of my favorite tools because I need to use them every single time. Another really great tool is a little pair of thread cutting scissors, those really tiny ones that are only 3 or 4 inches long, because when you're cutting the tips off of your piping bags, you want to get such a small tip that sometimes the big scissors just can't get them. So a little pair of thread cutting scissors is an awesome tool to have when you're doing cake and cookie decorating, I think.
Ooh, great answers and great ideas for some people looking to beef up their tool collection.
Yes.
Let's go back to icing for our next question. This comes from Sarah. So Sarah has experienced some air bubbles in her icing. What would you suggest that she do about that?
That's a really common problem, and it just comes from mixing your icing. Anytime you're mixing it, you're going to add air. There's a couple different ways you can solve that. The first one is when I'm mixing my large batch of royal icing, at the very last minute or two, I mix it on low in my mixer. I don't do that high speed mixing. I just have a really low pace. That I found has probably worked the best of all of these little tips I'm going to give. But if you want to do that, then additionally, once you put your icing in either a container or if you put a cover on it, walk away from it for a little bit. Again, make sure it's totally covered. It's fully mixed at this point. Walk away for about 5 minutes, and when you come back and peel off that cover, you're going to find all the bubbles have risen up to the top. And then I just take a spatula. It's very therapeutic, actually. Just take a spatula and run it through that icing and pop all of them. So that's the biggest way to solve it before it goes on the cookie or before it goes in your icing bag. Sometimes you do all that, and then when you dye your icing, you still get air bubbles because you're still mixing it and putting it into the bag. So one thing I do, once I've got it in my bag, and these are just disposable piping bags, I highly suggest using the disposable ones because you'll probably go through them a lot, even if you're just a novice cookie decorator. Once you do it, and I'm afraid to do it in here because I might have icing all over the place, but normally this wouldn't be cut yet. I would just tie my bag and take it and then whip it around just like this, like a helicopter essentially. Like I said, I won't do it now because I think we'd have icing covering this whole place. But before it's cut, if you whip it around kind of vigorously just for about 30 seconds, it works most of the air bubbles out. And then the last tip is just once they get on the cookie, because even after all that, you can still get them, just use your little poker, your scribe or your toothpick and poke them out. But those are a couple ways to keep them from getting there in the first place.
All right, I'm going to put my final call out for any final questions. We do have time for at least this one more that is in the chat box already. And this comes from Celia. I believe I'm saying that right. I hope I am. Celia asks, what do you do with all of your leftover icing?
I just eat it. No. Icing stays great, just like cookies do when frozen. So even if like these bags, if I'm not going to decorate today or tomorrow, I will just put these in a Ziploc and pop them in my freezer and take them out when I'm going to need these colors again. The only thing I usually do is take them out of the individual bags, remix it a little bit because the water in the icing can separate a little bit and kind of create this little clear line here. So you just want to remix it quick and then it's good to go. You can also add it into new batches of icing, but yeah, I definitely save all of my icing. There's always kind of a bag in my freezer. You can also do the fridge if you know, oh, I'm gonna decorate in 4 days or 3 days, but I'm not gonna decorate today. You can throw them in the fridge too. When it's longer than 3 or 4 days, then I would do the freezer.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, that is it for the questions that I have. So Maddie, I'm going to turn it over to you for some of your final thoughts before I say farewell with a few reminders from myself. Remind us where we can find you. Any final thoughts on today's project or maybe spooky season in general? The floor is yours.
Well, now I hope somebody makes these and makes an adorable Halloween cookie pop display. And if you do, definitely tag me in it because I would love to see what you come up with. If you make any cookie pops this season, tag me. My screen name is Garty Goodies on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I would love to see what you come up with. If you want to just get the basics of royal icing decorating, please check out my cookies. I have a bunch of free videos on creativecakedesign.com. You can see how to make the royal icing and some of the basics. And really just what you need to get going. If you're already going and you're ready to dive in, then these cookie pops are great for you because they're simple, they're fun, and what kid wouldn't absolutely love these? So I really hope you got everything you needed to know, and feel free to ask more questions if they come up, and I can try to answer them for you. Like I said, you can find me. I'm Garty Goodies on all social media.
Fantastic. And I would also like to point out to our viewers, there are some links to some of the classes and tutorials that Maddie mentioned throughout today's demonstration. You can find those in the chat box. So not only is the link for today's project and the PDF for those templates available in the chat box or in the link of the video description, you can find some of Maddie's other things as well in there. So you can keep up with her, check out some of those other tutorials, and really feel like you can get your cookie crafting going. A couple more things for me before we say farewell for today. First of all, like Maddie said, please share these cookies if you make them. And if you make them, please share them using the hashtag #ShareCraftsy. We would love to see the little twists and all of the fun ways that you put these projects together when you get into your own kitchen. And again, that hashtag is #ShareCraftsy. And speaking of Craftsy, we are giving away that free Craftsy Gold membership. In order to enter to win that membership, you text Halloween to 52056. We will be contacting the winner after this series ends, so make sure to enter by October 9th. Now we are finishing off this series tomorrow. We're starting a little bit earlier than we did today. We will start at 11 a.m. Central Time. It will be our final live event for our Halloween mini-series, and we will be streaming live with Brenda KB Anderson. Brenda is going to be providing a tutorial on how to make bat-themed candy pouches. These adorable treat bags can double as decorations for your party. All you do is tie them to a large branch with a strand of yarn and allow each guest to untie one as they head out the door. So each bag takes just 20 minutes to make, but you can shorten the time a bit by making them in larger batches. And of course, Brenda is going to have a lot of tips for you during the live demonstration as well. So make sure to download the free directions now. As a reminder, you can always come back and watch these later too. So if you joined us a little bit late and you want to see it from the beginning, just come on back to this page. You can always access the directions and instructions as well. And you can find the entire mini-series schedule in the video description. On behalf of Maddie and our team in the studio, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you tomorrow for a little more spooky season. Take care.